Adrian, how you doing, my man?
Good, good. How are you? Can you hear me
Awesome.
okay?
Yeah, I can hear you perfect. How's it on your end?
Good. The lighting would normally be better, but we're in the middle of like a thunderstorm.
Yeah, it was storming here this morning too. I don't know if I mean you're in Texas obviously, but there's actually a hurricane that might run right into Florida in the next couple of days. So,
Yeah,
I we're
there's a couple of hurricanes going into the Gulf right now.
yep,
Pretty crazy stuff.
yep, absolutely. All right, so let's
2020.
yeah, right. So let's get started because we got a lot to talk about. So everybody, thank you for joining. This is the Art of Mindful Medicine, episode 13, an introduction to our health and wellness practitioners and influencers. I am your host, Dr. Seth Gilson, biological dentist, certified yoga teacher, speaker, and personal coach. And my special guest today is Dr. Adrian Chavez. Adrian is a nutrition expert with an extensive background working with a wide variety of clients with cardiovascular, metabolic, hormonal, digestive, and autoimmune disease, although his primary specialty is with digestive issues including IBS and IBD. Adrian holds a master's degree in exercise science and a doctoral degree in nutrition and health promotion. He runs a highly rated podcast with over 200,000 downloads called Your Nutrition Prescription, where he has published over 350 short episodes covering various topics in nutrition. He's married with three children and lives in San Antonio, Texas. Adrian, thank you for coming on the show. Please say hello and introduce yourself just for a quick second, then we'll get started with some of the questions here.
How's it going? Yeah, thanks for having me. I think your intro was sufficient. I think you covered
Awesome.
the basics. So yeah, I'm ready. I'm excited to be here and ready to dive in.
Awesome. And everybody, I do definitely highly suggest going to check out that podcast that Adrian has out there. It's a lot of really solid information that is really important for everybody to be aware of. And obviously, you can do that at your leisure. Again, the name of it is Your Nutrition Prescription. And Adrian, so I always start with gratitude. So please, if you could today tell us three things that you're grateful for.
Oh, number one, my wife for waking me up this morning, and like, so I was like tired this morning, and she got up and
hmm
went on a run, and I was like, all right, I got to go out
hmm
and get up and go for a run as well. Number two, the rain, so went out, and normally running around Texas is rough because it's 100 degrees pretty much every day
Yeah.
right now, but today it was raining, and although I got soaked, it was really nice. Like
hmm
normally, I would be, oh my God, it's raining, just negatively thinking negative thoughts about it. Today, it was just like embraced it, and it was a pretty hard rain, but it was nice. Just out there, got wet, just enjoyed myself,
Awesome.
just got some time out. Um, and the third thing is for this platform, for being able to connect with amazing people, really do what I enjoy, which is, teach, try to help other people, find out how to employ some of this information into their lives so that they
hmm
can, get some positive health outcomes as a result.
Absolutely. I think that's beautiful, and I could completely agree with you, which is what prompted me to start this whole show. So um, that's awesome. I actually went for a run this morning too, and I was this close to having to do the same thing you did, go through the rain. I mean, it literally. I put my shoes on, it started to downpour. I was like, all right, let me give this like 5 minutes, and thankfully it stopped. But that's South Florida for you. That's the tropics. I mean, it'll be pouring 1 second, and then the next it's gone. So.
Yeah.
Um, all right, so let's learn a little bit about you, Adrian. Tell us about your story growing up, where you're from, a little bit of your personal life, things you like to do as a kid.
Yeah. So I grew up in Houston. I lived, I grew up in a low income area, lived in housing projects basically growing up when I was a
hmm
kid. I didn't, everything around me was poverty, poor health. There was no positivity necessarily around the area that I grew up
Uh-huh.
in. The thing that I really latched onto, like, in my mind, and you get these kids in these areas that are like, I just need to get out of here. I need to figure out how to get myself out of this scenario so that
hmm
I'm not living a life like this when I grow up. So the thing that I latched onto was basketball. Like for me, like that was my way out.
hmm
So that consumed my life from about nine on. Like all I ever thought about was how I'm going to use basketball in order to, you know, get a college scholarship so I can go to college, because I didn't know anyone who had a college degree. I didn't know
hmm
anyone who worked a professional job. Most people around me were unemployed or, you know, construction, that type of stuff, cleaning houses,
Yep.
if they were employed, So that's kind of like the catalyst to everything was just the love that I developed for basketball. The way that I kind of saw that as something that was going to help me get out
Mm-hmm.
of my situation. Along with that, I experienced some things growing up because we lived in, housing projects, was literally government subsidized housing. We had, multiple floods in my home, in our apartment. We live in a little 2-bedroom apartment with like 7 of us. We had multiple floods, and we had mold in our apartment, and
Mm-hmm.
me and all of my brothers. So I have 4 brothers. We all had allergies. We all had asthma. We had all these health issues.
Mm-hmm.
Always in and out of the doctor. When I was 10 years old, I think I missed like 40 or 50 days of school just from being like just
Yeah.
having such bad allergies. What I had was like upper respiratory infection all the time, and just got put
Mm-hmm.
on antibiotics over and over and over again. Ended up getting hepatitis, which was just random. Had hepatitis A, which I
Wow.
missed like a month of school for that. Like, and this was, I mean, this was just yeah, this was all a consequence of the environment of
Mm-hmm.
poor health, and I didn't realize this until later on. We were just living in an environment that was taxing our immune system. We were being exposed to mold, mycotoxins, all sorts of different things inside of the home, and that's what we're
Yeah.
breathing in on a regular basis. Except when we're at school. So we had just really really poor health. So I think that piece was another kind of foundation for me that I realized later on that really kind of ignited some of this passion in me. So fast forward a little bit, we moved out of that area. We kind of my family started to do a little bit better. We got into a better home and all that, and all of our issues started to improve.
Mm-hmm.
Not fully, but like the allergies started to go away. I used to be on allergy shots, allergy medications, all that. Started to slowly wean off of that stuff after, like, in middle school, high school, and then basketball. I ended up having some scholarship offers, but I just lost love for the game at that point. I had academic scholarships, so to me at that point it was like I didn't need to rely on it, and
Mm-hmm.
so uh, luckily kind of went into college, used that passion that I had for sports, athletics. Went in, started studying exercise science, started studying the human body, just
Mm-hmm.
became absolutely enamored with the way that the human body worked, what we could do in order to change our body, like put on a bunch of muscle. I think I gained like 25 or 30 pounds of muscle in the first like year of college,
Mm-hmm.
just because
Wow.
I would go to class and I would come home and I would be reading blogs and reading, everything I could about, how the body worked, how to exercise, how to eat, all of these different things. And at first I was majoring in like, I think I was like an accounting major or something, just because my SAT score is really high on math. So everyone's like, you need to go into accounting, engineering, but all I ever did outside of class was read, exercise science
Yeah.
and nutrition stuff. So that kind of caused me to change my major, started majoring in exercise science. Over time, I got my degree, went to a master's program. There was a very foundational point at that point in time in my life. I developed a stomach ulcer, so
Wow.
I had this pain every single day in my stomach. I was like, I didn't know what was going on. I'm a young guy at that as well. So I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna ignore it. It'll go away. Kept getting worse. Ended up going to a doctor. They told me I had probably had a stomach ulcer. Put me on what's called antibiotic or triple therapy for ulcer. They put me on a proton pump inhibitor, 2 antibiotics.
Wow. Jeez.
That made it worse. Like a couple, over. I think it was like a 2 or 3 week course. I don't really remember exactly how long it took it, but by the end of it, I was just like, my stool was like, I was like having diarrhea. Like, it was
Mm-hmm.
just completely messed me up.
Yeah.
And then the
I can
pain
only
didn't go
imagine.
away at all. So it was at that point I went back to the doctor, and he's like, okay, I need to refer you to a gastroenterologist. Went to a gastroenterologist, you know, and then we had this conversation. They're like, hey, we can do an endoscopy. We think it's an ulcer. We can cut it out. Like, it's most likely you have the perfect symptoms of an ulcer. We can do surgery. And I'm like, is there anything else that I can do? Like, is this related to my nutrition? They're like, no, this is stress, and this has nothing to do with what you eat. And I'm like, I just don't believe that. Like, it just
Mm-hmm.
didn't make sense to me. Because there would be some things like, if I would have like a banana, sometimes it would make more pain. And there was things that I just noticed. I was like, okay, let me see what I can do on my own. Because I'm not like, that just wasn't a sufficient answer for me. I'm like, I'm not going through surgery and to do something that I might be able to help
Hmm.
through my nutrition. So I started doing a bunch of research. Turns out, I this was most likely that stomach ulcer was most likely caused by the fact that I was taking a high dose ibuprofen for
Hmm.
most of my high school career because I had knee pain. Went to the doctor. Um, doctors. I mean, it was literally like poor training. I was jumping a lot and not really working my posterior chain and hamstrings
Hmm.
and glutes, and so I was putting a lot of strain on my knee from that reason. And
Yep.
so had chronic knee pain, patellar tendonitis. So the solution is let's put you on ibuprofen. And it helped. I mean, I felt great when I was on it, but
Yep.
took a
I know
high
all about
dose.
that life.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's good. It's a nice little solution. And when you walk away from that, the doctor made you happy because the next day you take a pill and it feels good. And it's 16, 17 years old. The only thing I wanted to do was go out and perform. So
Hmm.
it allowed me to do that. But at that point, there was it took a couple of years, but I was continuously like I just used ibuprofen as a pain management strategy
Hmm.
even beyond high school. I still I stayed active, started lifting, still had a lot of pain, still continued to take my ibuprofen that I was prescribed, and they just kept refilling the prescription.
Hmm.
And I just it took me like literally not that long to figure this out. Like, no doctor even asked me about it. No doctor asked me like, hey, do you have a history of NSAID use or anything like that? So it was at that point where, or they didn't mention it to me. I might have filled it out in the form, but they didn't mention it to me.
Yeah.
So it was at that point where I was like, oh, I need to stop this. Like,
Hmm.
this ibuprofen is definitely causing, leading to these issues or contributing to these issues. And then the other thing that I noticed was like when I was eating higher protein foods, it was causing that, and me trying to gain muscle, and being in that kind of frame of mind of being in that area, like I was eating 200 250 grams of protein per day.
Hmm.
So kind of shifted my diet, went more plant based at that time,
Hmm.
reduced my protein intake, stayed away from acidic foods. Started to do like I would eat these big green salads every single day, like 2 meals a day. Started juicing. I came across some random study because I was in a master's program at that time. I was getting familiar with how to evaluate the research literature. Came across a study that showed like, well, cabbage juice might help. So started eating a lot of cabbage. Started juicing
Hmm.
cabbage, and within about 6 to 8 weeks, like my symptoms were completely gone. Like took
Wow.
just a
That's
few
that's pretty
months.
quick for I mean for not
Yeah,
making a whole lot of changes. I mean,
yeah. Well, no, my dietary changes were pretty dramatic. Like
okay.
like I was eating big piece of chicken, and then like maybe some type of carb. It would usually be like pasta or something like that. Like every meal was big piece of chicken or big
Got
piece
you.
of steak, and
Got you. Got you.
and it went from that to a giant salad with nuts and seeds and fruit and berries, and like just it was a completely
Yep.
different
I
dietary approach.
I
Um,
completely understand that.
yeah, so like man, that just made a huge difference in the in I was able to quote unquote cure this issue that I thought I was gonna have to get a surgery for. And at the time, I had discussed it with them that I was gonna have to pay like 5 grand out of pocket just for the procedure. And I'm
Hmm.
like, this blows my mind that all it took was me changing my diet, and no one told me about this. So that was the point where the light bulb came on in my head, and I was like, man,
So let
food.
me hold
Yeah, go
me
ahead.
because I want to get to that part, but I want myself and other people to understand a little bit. So when you were starting college and you said you were going home and you were reading blogs and what to eat, how to work out, all these things, and then this all happened, and like you said, you went from eating a big piece of chicken, big some kind of carb to greens. So basically, I mean, and like you put it, you went from eating a lot of you decreased your amount of your protein intake. But obviously, I mean, plants and veggies have protein in it. So I mean, it's also the type of protein I would imagine that you changed to. So what was the your nutrition or diet like before, and then and what was it like after you made this kind of transformation?
Yeah, so before, I mean, I was having like a couple whey protein shakes a day.
Mm-hmm.
I would eat like, a bunch of eggs in the
Mm-hmm.
morning, and which nothing wrong with these things, but like, eating a bunch of eggs in the morning, every morning, I would eat eggs and beans or eggs and potatoes, and then for lunch, it was for lunch. I mean, I would just meal prep chicken. Like I had a freezer full of chicken. Like it was like
I did too, so I get it. I
it was
100% get
it
it.
was like 4 additional meals a day, and it was a big slab of chicken and whatever else other type of beans was a big carb source for me as well.
Hmm.
Although that's another also a good protein source. So like for me,
Hmm.
beans was like, okay, well I can increase the protein even further, and I was probably eating like I said 250 upwards of 250 grams of protein per day.
Wow.
Whereas when I changed my diet, that I was probably under 150, 125. Like I probably cut my protein intake in half
Wow.
because I wasn't centering my meals around a giant piece of protein the way that I was before. And then, I was just I wasn't eating. I was eating for a college student. I had probably the healthiest diet around, but I was still eating. Eating late nights sometimes, having pizza and all that stuff.
Hmm.
So I kind of cut most of that out just so I could, or pretty much all of that out for a period of time, just to see
Hmm.
like, I mean, because for me, I was desperate.
Yeah.
I needed to do something, and the option that was given to me wasn't sufficient. Like
Hmm.
that was not okay with me. So that's how my diet shifted. It changed to I was still doing I started doing smoothies in the morning at that point, and I still do smoothies in the morning most days. Like
Hmm.
that was
Me
probably
too.
10 years ago. So I've been doing it for 10 to 12 years now. Like
Yeah.
smoothies almost every morning. But smoothies in the morning, salad for lunch, salad for dinner. When I was, if I had a pizza, it was making it at home. We're putting a bunch of veggies on there. Like
Yep.
I started just doing everything a lot different. I was in a class at that point too called Advanced Functional Foods and Nutraceuticals, and that just like opened my eyes. Like it was a combination of things. I was like going through this thing, and then I was studying like the nutritional, like kind of the medicinal properties of different foods,
Hmm.
and everything that we were studying was plant foods. We're talking
Yeah.
about the compounds in broccoli. We're talking
Hmm.
about the compounds in garlic and in grapes and in other plant foods, and I'm like,
Hmm.
well, if these are the foods that have the bioactive molecules that have kind of like medicinal properties, I need to incorporate more of these into my diet. So
100%.
you
Yeah.
know I before I was probably eating maybe a serving of veggies a day. Sometimes I would throw a little bit of broccoli on the side because that was just like the way that bodybuilding.com told me to eat. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that was the
Yeah.
source of information primarily is like those type of bodybuilding.com physique focused type of blogs and websites. So
I'd imagine a
shifted
lot of
that.
these websites, because a lot of people read these blogs and websites,
Oh
and
yeah.
I mean, I would definitely want people to understand, just because they don't develop a stomach ulcer like you did, unfortunately, doesn't mean that there aren't other underlying problems that can develop that you might not realize right away. Because that's a really important fact. I mean, in some ways, you were fortunate that happened, because I mean, it kind of changed the trajectory of your life and your whole, I mean, your whole life basically.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
no, exactly. Like I'm fortunate. Like I feel glad that I had that experience because
mm-hmm,
that shifted everything. Like that shifted my career. That shifted the way that I ate. I was an exercise science major. I was planning on getting my doctorate in exercise physiology. I wanted to train NBA athletes. Like
mm-hmm,
that was my life. Like I mean, nutrition for me, nutrition was what can it do for performance and the way you look. And in my opinion, if you perform well and you look good, you were healthy.
mm-hmm.
I didn't
That's
realize
most
that
people's opinion nowadays. So, I mean,
exactly.
I get it.
Yeah, I didn't realize that health wasn't equated to like what you look like in the mirror. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm in great shape. I should
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
in great health. So that's when I just started understanding the disconnect between the way that you look on the outside and what's going on the inside,
Mm-hmm.
and diet for physique and performance versus diet for wellness and longevity and health and
Mm-hmm.
digestive health as well. So these are the factors that started to that's the thing that kind of opened my eyes at that point. I you know I literally changed my entire trajectory. Like I was reaching out to professors in exercise physiology programs and trying to find like the right fit for me, and I
Mm-hmm.
just shifted and started looking at nutrition programs. And I mean, I had almost no background in nutrition, like formal
Wow.
background in nutrition. So I had taken a couple of classes. That graduate class that I was in, the teacher told me that I should drop the class on the first day. He was like, "This is going to be too hard for you. Like you don't have a degree in nutrition, and I know they let you sign up for the course because we kind of have, we're in the same department, but you
Mm-hmm.
need to drop the course because this is way too deep for someone with an exercise science background.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, this wasn't this was never going to school for me. This is what I like. This is my life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so for me it wasn't, oh yeah, and this is gonna be hard for me to study for a class. Like I just dove deep. Like that class took up all my time that semester because I was trying to catch up
Mm-hmm.
and really figure out. I literally read nutrition textbooks from front to back on my own during this
Mm-hmm.
period of time, like multiple nutrition textbooks, nutritional biochemistry, nutrition 101, like all the basic nutrition textbooks that I saw that the classes required. I just read
Mm-hmm.
them front to back just so I could get that background knowledge. And then that's when I started like reaching out to programs that I thought I might be able to get into in terms of nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily, I was able to find a place. Arizona State University has like a joint nutrition exercise science program,
Very cool.
and I was able to find a place there and get an offer for like a fellowship. So that kind of led me to going over to Arizona State, doing my PhD. Finished that, and my PhD was focused cardiovascular metabolic nutrition because I see, the thing that stood out to me was like, people are dying in this country because of
Mm-hmm.
cardiovascular disease, diabetes, these cardiovascular and metabolic issues. So that was
Yep.
really, during my PhD, that's all I studied was uh, insulin resistance and metabolism and
Mm-hmm.
cardiovascular disease, which is great. It has a really good translation into the general public. But getting into practice. So after my PhD, I did
Yeah,
a
I was going to
brief
say then
stint.
how did you get into the practice of this now?
Yeah, yeah. So after my PhD, I did a brief stint. I took a research fellowship after my PhD. Realized it just academia wasn't it wasn't where I wanted to continue my career. It's very
Mm-hmm.
demanding. There's a lot of red tape. I didn't feel like it was as impactful as I wanted. My career trajectory to be. Now it could be, but there's difficulties in academia. So I decided to kind of go out in private practice. Started working with. I mean, I've worked with over 1,000 people at this point, but with people who wanted to lose weight, people who wanted to get off diabetes drugs and cholesterol drugs and blood pressure medications, and then also um, I started to come across individuals who had digestive issues,
Mm-hmm.
and all the standard things that I had learned, like increase fiber intake. And there's some basic things that we learned about digestion, like fiber was the biggest thing. Like, well, fiber is good for digestion, so increase fiber. And then I would be recommending that, and my clients were getting worse, like particularly people with IBS. Like if
Mm-hmm.
you have IBS in small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and you eat more fiber, your symptoms are going to get worse. And I realized that, and I'm like, okay, I'm lacking this area of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
That was the point where I was like, there's a piece of this puzzle that I just don't have right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I dove deep into that. My first year after when I went into private practice, dove deep into the digestion piece, and it just fascinated me because to me, digestion, we know almost all we need to know about cardiovascular disease, diabetes,
Yeah,
metabolism, insulin
pretty
resistance.
pretty much.
We know how to fix that. Digestion was like a new thing. It was like,
Mm-hmm.
we're barely figuring out the microbiome. We're
Mm-hmm.
barely understanding these relationships between the microbiome and our physiology and how it's interacting with our immune system and how
Mm-hmm.
genetics play a role. And I'm the type of person that likes to be continually challenged.
Mm-hmm.
I started applying some of this to the first couple of clients that I had. And these clients weren't with me for digestive issues, but they had digestive issues, and we talked
Mm-hmm.
about them. And so I started applying some of the stuff that I was learning, and I was like, oh wow, I'm helping. I was getting good results. I was realizing that I was helping people with who were suffering like on a daily
Yeah.
basis with stomach pain, with extreme constipation, with all of the secondary factors like the brain fog, the fatigue, the
Mm-hmm.
skin issues, the autoimmune disease. When we
Yep.
were working on these gut issues, those things are improving, and
Mm-hmm.
that's when I really decided to shift my focus and really focus on working with these digestive issues because everyone I came across just had seen so many people
Mm-hmm.
without having any benefit. And I'm like, well,
Mm-hmm.
maybe if I spend enough time figuring this stuff out, I can help these people. And I feel like I'm not like I still have a long way to go. But really getting in and learning the basics and understanding the microbiome and understanding the immune, how the microbiome interacts with the immune system and the gut lining and all these other factors.
Mm-hmm.
I've been able to really help lots and lots of people who otherwise, who've seen other practitioners who've done what they feel like is everything and have feel almost hopeless at this point. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm really thankful for kind of finding that direction. I feel like when I work with someone, like I can have such a huge impact on somebody's life, and that I'm thankful for, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
I'm constantly learning. I love everything about digestion and how it works, and the fact that this is the cutting edge of like
100%.
health, digestion, or like microbiome and genetics. These are the two things that are gonna, in my opinion, these are the two things that are gonna unlock like a level of health that we've never been able to experience once we learn more about them and learn more about how to work
Optimize.
with them. Yeah,
Yeah,
optimize them. Definitely.
exactly. So I mean, I think that that's fantastic, and I totally agree with you. I mean, the research that I've read, that over the past year, I'd say, that has to do with the microbiome and how the gut health is such a like you said, a larger factor than ever thought in the past, and how it interacts with the nervous system, and how the stomach and heart actually communicate to the brain as much as or more than the brain actually communicates the other way around. So I
Yeah.
mean that's a huge factor right there. I mean, and then with how like the standard American diet and how nutrition is viewed, and the kind of over the counter medications that people take for such things like simple like indigestion and stuff like that. I mean, there's huge factors that people just tend to ignore, and it's really unfortunate. But I mean, we're going to get into all that too. But I'd want to shift a little bit to some of the other things that you were going through in this journey, which is like mindfulness and yoga and things like that. Because from our previous discussion, that was a big factor that influenced you in your decision making, and how you wanted to pursue the rest of your career and life. So if you could just describe to us what mindfulness means to you in your own words, please.
I mean, the way that I see mindfulness is just awareness,
Mm-hmm.
just being aware of how you're feeling, what's like, and just internally aware with what's going on inside of you, inside of your body, inside of your mind. And I think for me, like, although I wouldn't call it, quote unquote, what most people think mindfulness, I think for me, when I first moved out of my home when I was 18, um, I just ate junk food, and I was eating junk food, growing up. Like we ate whatever was cheapest, basically, like
Mm-hmm.
the cheapest food that if it our food choices were based on cost. So
Mm-hmm.
we were ramen noodles and frozen food and all that stuff is what I grew up on. But when the first time I went to the grocery store, um, on my own, where I was paying for things on my own, I was like, I couldn't bring myself to buy that stuff. Like
Mm-hmm.
I knew that it wasn't the right thing, and that's what
Yep.
opened. Like that was the piece that said, okay, I need to learn about what I need to feed myself. I'm an adult
100%.
now. I need to feed. Like I know that this matters to a certain degree. I didn't know to the degree that it does now, but the young naive kid. So I like started to pay attention to that early on, and then throughout this journey, it's really, kind of tuning in to how things make me feel,
Mm-hmm.
how, the dietary changes make me feel, how all of these different lifestyle habits are reflecting on the other aspects of my life. And always really just kind of tuning into to myself, I feel like is a huge part of that journey. It wasn't till, about, I'd say I was about right before I started my PhD that I actually started to incorporate a little bit of yoga, started to incorporate a little bit of meditation,
Mm-hmm.
and then got a lot more, involved in like a daily mindfulness practice. And then it was at that point where I feel like there was just a kind of a shift of, and it goes back to what we were talking about a second ago. Like I used to see as like academia was my path of like, well, I want to get a PhD, and the only job after that is, as a professor.
Hmm.
And that I feel like the mindfulness practices are what kind of opened my mind, opened my realm of possibilities of like,
Hmm.
no, I don't have to do this.
Hmm.
I'm an intelligent person. I'm creative. I have tools and skills and knowledge that is
Hmm.
valuable outside of someone paying me a paycheck in an academic setting. And that was, I think, the piece that has led me to kind of go out on my own, start to build my own business. And it really took that tuning in and really understanding like I'm much more powerful than what I think is possible, or what
Hmm.
I've been trained to believe is possible, of needing to follow this path that everyone else goes down. So I think that piece was really the factor that just unlocked this realm of possibilities that was beyond what I thought was possible. I never in a million years did I think that in my early 30s that I would be running my own business
Hmm.
and dictating my schedule and not having to answer to someone else and do what they're telling me to do.
Hmm.
And I mean, I can't credit these practices that I started to incorporate in my mid 20s anymore for that, because I mean, I think that's the we get so stuck in our own heads that sometimes when you can release and get away from the little ego that's talking
Hmm.
in there, like you can see like, okay, there's more out there.
Yep.
And that's I think that's uh, how it's impacted me the most.
Awesome. Awesome. And yeah, it definitely seems to have expanded your horizons like exponentially. And that sounds like the mental emotional aspect. Like you underwent a great deal of healing. And in your practice, incorporating any kind of mindful practices or anything like that, what kind of additional physical benefits do you feel that has for people?
Oh, wow. So, um, I mean, if we look at the statistics, this is one of the things that kind of blew my mind early on, is like the majority of women who've been through like domestic violence situations have IBS. Like,
Wow.
that's not a coincidence.
Yeah.
A lot of times, so I go through a thorough history with every client, and a lot of times my clients, particularly the ones with autoimmune conditions, their trigger, the thing that like really led to the increase in their symptoms, was usually a traumatic event. It was like a parent dying, or a relationship ending, or getting into a very toxic relationship. And at first, I thought nutrition is the way. If I just give people the right food, they're gonna get better. But then
Yeah.
when
And
you
in certain
step,
aspects, for sure.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, inter-
I
no, it's
accidentally
all good. The
cut
internet kind of blocked
connection.
out there. So.
Yeah. But once you start to work with people and start to dig into these stories, you realize like, oh wow, there's a lot more than just just nutrition, and there's so much that needs to be unpacked from a mental and emotional aspect in many
Hmm.
cases, that it's extremely important to get into that. And although I'm not an expert, and a lot of times what I'll do is I'll refer out, I'll recommend like, hey, I recommend you go work with a counselor, try to find someone who could help you in that area of things. I do always recommend, journaling is a huge one that I tend to recommend. I will usually send specific types of meditations to clients, like if there's something that I think might benefit them. If they feel like, a lot of times you have people who don't believe that they can heal, and if you don't believe you can heal, you can't. Period. Like, if
Hmm.
you don't believe, you can't.
100%.
We have to work on those beliefs, and the only way to work on those beliefs is through mindfulness, through meditation, through these practices.
Yeah, because healing
So
starts within you. I mean, you have to believe it, and you have to feel those. Um, you have to feel that and experience that healing internally before it can be manifested on externally. So
Exactly. So a lot of times, that's the first conversation I'm having with people is like,
awesome.
I need you to believe this first, and we need to culminate this belief, and we're going to incorporate other ways of doing this. Do, like I said, journaling, do the meditation, through yoga,
Mm-hmm.
through other types of mindfulness practices. And I found that, in one of the things and that I've found is a lot of times people lose trust in their body,
Yeah.
and they start to, like, I always tell people too, like, you know your body better than I do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to guide you.
Mm-hmm.
You're your most important healing tool. And I see people lose trust in their body, and typically, like, and unfortunately, we're on this platform, and I love Instagram for many reasons, but typically a lot of times it's from people, from getting misinformation and
Yep.
believing it and
Yep.
really internalizing it. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
have people who think they're sensitive to all these different foods for,
Yeah,
maybe
we were
they
just
saw a
talking about.
naturopath.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe they saw a naturopath and they got a food sensitivity test, or maybe even they followed a certain person who said that this certain food was bad for any particular reason, and they started to slowly whittle down the number of foods that they were eating, because this food might be bad for this reason, and this food might be bad for this reason, and pulling all that together, then they end up on like 4 different foods, and then they
Mm-hmm.
have so much anxiety around eating
Yeah.
that this just perpetuates this cycle. And I've had clients where I've literally had, like, they tell me that they were sensitive to these foods, and I'm like, look, I want you to eat them, but I want you to, before you eat, I want you to tell yourself, like, this is nourishing, this
Mm-hmm.
is healing, this food
Such a
is.
that's yoga right there, man. Like 100%. I mean, that's so profound for people. I mean, yoga and Ayurvedic medicine and things like that. That's what that is. I mean, being emotionally positive to kind of dummy it down a little bit about what you're putting in your body. It's so important. So
Yeah,
important.
yeah. I've seen people go from, having all these food sensitivities to, and not being able, like, literally thinking like, oh, I can't eat this and I can't eat that and I can't eat that, to when they approach it from a different angle, and they had symptoms before. It wasn't that,
Mm-hmm.
like, they would actually have physical symptoms,
Mm-hmm.
but it was emotionally driven. I mean, this nocebo effect, this is well documented. If you believe something's going to be bad for you, it might be bad for you, and
Yeah.
you might actually experience a physical response, because your brain is telling your body that this is going to cause that. But if you
Yep.
can shift that and approach it with a, your brain's telling your body, this is nourishing, this is
Mm-hmm.
this is food, this is healthy for me, this is going to
Mm-hmm.
help me heal. That I mean, and again, this is not every case, but
Of
in
course.
some
Yeah. Yeah.
cases, and I can identify them through the conversations that we have. In some cases, I've seen people just go from 7 foods to just eating all these different foods and really diversifying their diet. In
Oh, connection.
I,
It's all
no,
good.
no,
It's
no, I had
Wi-Fi
this.
sometimes.
Yeah. So just in a couple of weeks, it's like, they quote unquote overcame food sensitivities in just a few weeks, and
Yep.
it's like, it really is just a message that they're giving their immune system. Your body
Mm-hmm.
listens to every thought that you have,
Mm-hmm.
and if you're sending your body a message of fear, of anxiety, of stress, of this food's gonna harm me, it's more likely to. Whereas if
Mm-hmm.
you're just looking at it from the other angle, it's not. So these are the ways that I've incorporated that. And again, at first, I didn't that wasn't even on my radar.
Mm-hmm.
That required, a lot of experience, and then seeing the data of, like, the really digging into nocebo and how important that is, and
Mm-hmm.
really digging into the relationship between trauma and, emotional trauma, and IBS and IBD, and the relationship between the gut and the brain. These factors are what really have, I've really placed so much more of a heavy emphasis on this. And again, it depends on the client, but some clients, it's like, I almost don't change anything but that at first. Whereas
Yeah.
others, they're in the right mental space and it's
Yeah,
really
that
just a
that
physical
that
thing.
makes total sense to me because I mean, before you change what they're physically doing, like I said before, healing comes from within. So you got to change the mindset. You got to change the emotions surrounding the activities that they're doing and the foods and things that they're eating. So that actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So real quick, because we got about 20 minutes, I really want to touch on a bunch of stuff with you. So, and if anybody watching has questions, Adrian and I discussed this. Once I finish this episode, because of course Instagram cuts us off at an hour, I'm gonna post this video and then restart another live for a Q&A. And if there's any questions that I have left over, whatever, we can go over those too. Just for maybe like 10-15 minutes, guys. So if you have questions, please write them down or keep them in your mind. So when I start the next live episode right after this one, you can get those questions in because there's going to be a lot of really good information. And I really want everybody to get the answers that they may be seeking. And then of course you can always reach out to either of us following. But so that's really impactful how the emotional side affects what we're eating. But in the reverse, and this is one of the big questions is how exactly does the nutrition, the foods that you're eating influence the mental state?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think it's so difficult because in my case, I mean, when you say that to me, I don't think of food as food. I think of food as what we're eating, but how our microbiome is breaking that down and the metabolites that are being produced as a result of the microbiome fermentation of that food and
Mm-hmm.
what that's doing for the mental state. And I mean, we it's just well documented that, for example, most people who have restless leg syndrome, which is just, these people typically tend to have anxiety. They tend to
Mm-hmm.
be, just more high strung. Most of those people, I think it's like 80%, when they test them, these people test positive for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, food exacerbates it because the food allows for those bacteria to multiply, but it's the bacteria and it's the microbiome that's actually impacting the nervous system, is
100%.
triggering a sympathetic nervous system response and causing that restlessness, causing the leg shaking, causing the fidgeting. And a lot of times, I mean, and again, if you have a little bit of anxiety, it's not saying that you have SIBO or anything like that. You really, let's not take it too far. But a lot of people, some of these mental and emotional factors are related to the gut, and a lot of times food impacts the mood, not based on the way that it's fermented in the gut and based on what it's doing to the microbiome. And that's one of the big factors. And this is one where you see a lot of people, this is where the no carb movement came in. Your low carb movement. You'll see so many people here on Instagram like promoting like a carnivore, very low carb,
Mm-hmm.
extreme keto diet for anxiety. And I would be willing to bet that if we tested these people, it's a microbiome thing. And it's not that the carbs are bad. It's just carbs. Carbs have what's called fermented. Like some carbs are fermented by our gut bacteria, and that those bacteria produce metabolites. They multiply when you give them those carbs. So that's where I see a lot of people cutting out all carbs, and they say, "Oh, my mood's so great because I'm on no carbs." And it's like, man, I'm the opposite. Like I feel absolutely horrible when I'm on no carbs.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I feel like in most cases, and if you listen to stories of people who have really, really good success with these zero carb diets, almost all of them have a history of digestive issues.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, in my opinion, that's where the strongest relationship is it's the interaction between our food and our microbiome and how that's impacting neurotransmitter production and all the
Mm-hmm.
metabolites that can be produced from our microbiome that can interfere with neurotransmitters, can lead to chronic inflammation, systemic inflammation,
Mm-hmm.
like LPS, kind of getting into the system, causing inflammation and interfering with all sorts of different processes in our body. And that's to me, and again, I'm looking at it through a very narrow lens because this is the clients that I work with, but pretty
Yeah.
much everyone I work with has a history of anxiety and depression
Yeah.
And a lot of that, just improves dramatically
Of course,
once
and it's
we
in
work on
varying
the
degrees, of
microbiome.
course. I mean, just the way our kind of society. Not that. I mean, look, there's obviously positive and negatives to the way our society is, but there's a lot of stress surrounding the different types of lifestyles that people want to pursue. But I'd imagine that most people don't know how good they can feel until they actually feel that way. So like somebody's like, "There, look, I feel fine," but okay, because that's maybe how you've mostly always felt. But until you make some of these little changes, you had no idea how great you can really feel, and
Yeah,
that's what I would imagine.
that's one of my favorite quotes. Like most people have no idea how good they're supposed to feel. Like
Hmm.
your body's you're supposed to have energy. You're supposed to wake up in a positive mood. You're supposed to not. I mean, and of course, there's going to be variations
Yeah,
in
yeah,
that. Where like last night I stayed up till 11:30 and I woke up a little bit groggy today. But normally, if I'm getting good sleep, like I'm waking up, I'm energetic, and if I'm not, there's something going on.
yep,
And it's just being in tune with your body and really understanding but at that same time, if you, like you said, if you're used to it, you don't know, and you're
yeah,
like, well, this is just how I feel now. This is normal.
hmm
And a lot of times, one of my favorite things is getting people to a new normal.
hmm
To use a commonly used term right now, a new normal is
yep,
energetic. New normal is being able to eat food without having, pain and bloating and
hmm
digestive issues after your meal, and feeling that dip in energy, and all these factors that come along with some of these digestive issues. That's not normal, and
hmm
if you're there, that needs to be addressed, and uh, and you can get to a new normal.
yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned before, so there's some fundamental parts of Eastern medicine, like Chinese and Ayurvedic medicine, and they use food as an integral part of both diagnosing and treatment. Um, what's your feeling on how nutrition, or do you feel that nutrition is taken less seriously in Western medicine with like allopathic medicine and things like that?
Oh, 100%. Every single one of my clients, pretty much, almost all of them, have been told by MDs that food has absolutely nothing to do with what you eat, which is so stupid. Like, I don't get how, like, sorry, like, excuse
No,
the
no,
way
no.
that I'm
I
saying it, but
did, dude.
I
Yeah,
can't help it because, like, everything that you eat goes in your gut. Like,
yeah,
how would that not be related? Like, that
yeah.
makes no sense. And then
Hmm.
and then people will, like, these patients will go to the doctor and say, like, I feel worse when I eat these foods, and they still get told that it has nothing to do. Like, I just don't get it, and it's just the way that the medical system is set up. That
Hmm.
you have to, if you're seeing an allopathic doctor, you have to understand their role.
Hmm.
They are there to give you medication if you're sick.
Hmm.
If you're expecting anything more than that, you're expecting too much. Now, there
Hmm.
are some great doctors who are well versed in nutrition that will give you more than that. But if that's the purpose of seeing an allopathic medicine doctor, the
Hmm.
purpose is to make sure that you're not sick, and if you are sick, then you can get drugs or surgery for the most part, and that those
Yeah,
are they're not there to help you maintain your wellness.
absolutely.
And a lot of times, especially with these digestive issues, since they're so related to microbiome, since they're so related to your food, these digestive issues, I mean, traditional doctors have almost no tools in order
Hmm.
to deal with these. With IBD, they're going to try to squash your immune system. What's triggering your immune system? Like, why? Let's look at the important piece. Like,
Yeah,
let's not defund the police in a way. Like, that's what you're
it's a
doing
good
when you're putting
analogy.
people on biologics. Like, you're defunding the police rather than saying, well, where's all this crime coming from? Where are these other factors that are that are causing this poor relationship between
Hmm.
the what someone's eating, or causing someone's immune system to be just destroy their gut, basically. Like, because
Yeah.
that's what IBD is, your immune system destroying your gut. And the reason it's doing that is because there's microbes in your gut that are being attacked.
Yeah.
There's food antigens that you're eating that your immune system is going after. Like, for example, if your immune system comes in direct contact with proteins from milk or gluten, and there's not a healthy gut barrier to keep those two apart, there's going to be a lot of issues going on, and we got to look at those things. We got to look
Yeah.
at repairing the gut lining. We got to look at nutrient deficiencies that might be preventing the immune system from regulating itself, because
Mm-hmm.
the immune system, yeah, it can become hyperactive, but it has internal regulation systems,
Mm-hmm.
Th17 cells and these other immune cells that help kind of, in the T regulatory cells that help balance the immune system. And if you're low in vitamin D, your immune system doesn't have the right amounts of these regulatory cells. And that's everybody that I've ever worked with.
Yeah.
I've never had any person with IBD who wasn't low in vitamin D, who didn't have a vitamin
Mm-hmm.
D of 30 or below, and they're not taking vitamin D because their doctors never even mentioned it.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to that, you really just have to say that that's the purpose of this doctor. And
Yeah.
everyone that I work with, I typically say, hey, I want you to maintain a relationship with a gastroenterologist. I
Yeah.
want
Yeah.
you to have a primary care MD, but you have to just understand their role in your treatment and your healing.
Mm-hmm.
And they have this role, and then your role is your nutrition, your lifestyle, your
Mm-hmm.
habits, your sleep, your exercise. That's
Yeah.
your role. And if you
And
need guidance in
educating
that
yourself
area,
on all these things.
exactly,
Yeah.
or getting guidance so that you can kind of
Exactly.
that process.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, and I've said this on previous episodes with other people, and I mean, I'm going to say it again. There are different types of medicine. There's like, for example, functional medicine, integrative medicine, things like that, and there's allopathic medicine. And the philosophies of Eastern medicine and Western medicine really just need to be utilized together. And look, there's not very many people that know both and can integrate both in their own practice and can really um, translate that to people. So a lot of times we have to have maybe 2 or 3 different doctors working with us in some way to optimize our overall health, because there's healthcare and there's sick care. And when you're sick and if you're in a car accident or you need a surgery, hell yeah, go to the hospital because you need to see the ER and go to the OR or something like that. But if you have some sort of chronic illness or things like that, just taking a pill is not, in my experience and from the people I've spoken to, that is not the answer for most people. I mean,
Yeah.
it is a lifestyle decision, and a lot of times medications can help, and that's a great way to start. But for the most part, like you said, what you put in your body is the most important, and how you interact with what you put in your body and your environment is so much more important. So
Mm-hmm.
I totally understand what you're saying. It's definitely in alignment with the things I've talked about with a lot of other people. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. So, I mean, just what you mentioned, and one of the things you mentioned a second ago that I wanted to just kind of touch on really quickly, you said like Eastern medicine uses food as a diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
That's literally the most important diagnostic tool that I use in my practice.
Mm-hmm.
What do you respond negatively to? Let's do an elimination diet. Let's reintroduce. Let's see what you're responding to. That's the most important diagnostic tool.
That's how you individualize things for people. I mean,
yeah, and I have people coming to me like, oh, I have all this, this food sensitivity test and a stool test and this test, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, sometimes these things are good, but you got to start with the basics. Like the food is literally like how you respond to food from a digestive standpoint. Just because the symptoms are so clear, you eat, you get a symptom. It's really easy to tie those two together. Food is the most important diagnostic tool in my practice.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, and I really can't see it being done any better way. And as we were talking about before, in medical schools and things like that, to your knowledge and through the people that you've met, how much do doctors actually learn about nutrition in school?
Oh, they might get a semester. They might get 2 semesters max.
That's even more than what I've heard, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, no. So I mean, so a lot of it's 0, but a lot of it's semester, and it's trying to cover all nutrition in 1 semester. Like I've been studying this heavily, like full time for 7 years, and I feel like I'm not even close to there yet. Like there's still so much. I learn something new every day.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I mean, it's almost, it's comical, but that again, that's not what they're there for. And if you approach it in that way, and unfortunately, the conventional medicine system drains so many people financially that they can't invest in guidance anywhere else. And that's one
Mm-hmm.
of the pieces that frustrates me a lot. Is like, a lot of my clients with IBD, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's, they're spending thousands of dollars a month plus their insurance on treatment and on diagnostics that they don't have the resources to invest elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll come to me, and we'll talk about working together, and they're like, honestly, what working with you is less than what I'm just
Oh
making from the
yeah, for
colonoscopy,
sure.
but I can't do it because we're drowning in medical debt. And that piece like really frustrates me because it's just a deep systemic issue. And
Mm-hmm.
this would take us down the biggest rabbit hole of all if we go into this discussion,
For
because
sure.
it's just
I,
medical
I,
funding and the whole system, the way that it's set up.
yeah, I know. That's all I'm going to say is I 100% know. Um, and also in your experience, so when working with doctors or from people that that work with doctors, do doc, I mean, what would you say? I mean, do you think there's a fair amount of doctors that are taught to use nutrition as a complement to their treatments, or is it just not even?
It's almost 0%. I've
Wow.
never had a client who got decent nutrition advice from a doctor, besides
Wow.
like what they give them on the one page. you know Here's your little one page of diverticulitis: eat more fiber, avoid corn, nuts, seeds. And then the science doesn't even support that, though. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of this stuff is outdated. Like,
Yeah.
even their little one pagers that they give to digestive clients are usually outdated.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in some rare cases, and the research is evolving, so
Of
it is
course.
challenging, and it takes a long time for the research to actually get into medical practice, because if you're practicing, you're not doing research. Whereas for
Mm-hmm.
me, I I do. I mean, I split my time between both, because I can't serve my clients if I'm not doing research.
Of
Period.
course. That's all,
Like,
but I feel the same way about general medicine. But again, like you said, that's a systemic issue, though.
yeah,
That in having a physical practice, I mean, it just kind of, we won't go down that rabbit hole, not today, anyways. But
yeah,
it's like you said it perfectly. It's a systemic issue. So, but I think it's so important, and not just going to CE once or twice a year, and which is continuing education for those that might not know. I mean, yes, it's important to stay on top of that, but this is something that has to be done on a weekly, monthly basis for people to really stay on top of things. And I just got the notification that we are going to cut out in about 2 minutes. So
okay.
I'm going to end this one. Like I said, I'm just going to tell everybody, because there's some other people that joined in. I'm going to end this episode now, and then I'm going to restart another one immediately following, and we're going to do a quick Q&A. I have some more questions, so we'll probably do about 15 more minutes or so of some of the other questions that I have. And if you have any questions for Adrian or myself, please write them down, and we're gonna get to all these questions that we can right now. All right, as we were.
Yeah, we're gonna do a whole hour on the
No,
healthcare
no,
system.
no, no. I mean, I know we could, but I mean, I'm not gonna eat up your Saturday. So I appreciate you spending a little extra time with us. It's really, really important information, and you have so much knowledge on this topic. So I'm so grateful to have you on here, man. Um, so we were just talking about allopathic medicine, or Western type of medicine, and Eastern medicine. Um, why do you think it's challenging for people to understand that what we eat affects our body both mentally and physically, though?
Honestly, it's culturally programmed.
Mm-hmm.
If it was such an important thing, why isn't the government, putting some regulations on it? Why aren't
Yeah.
doctors speaking to us about it? Why isn't it something that we're talking about in school? Why
Mm-hmm.
isn't this something that, in health class? Why isn't nutrition 50% of it?
Mm-hmm.
That if it's not discussed, and you grow up in that way, and you grow up in the environment where fast food on every corner, and no one eats that way. I mean, especially where I mean, depending on where you grew up in the United States, but I grew up in the
Mm-hmm.
South. Everyone's overweight. Everyone eats horribly.
Mm-hmm.
Fried food, and uh, you know it's not even on the radar. It doesn't
Yeah.
doesn't if you get sick, it's a medication. And I
Hmm.
would when I first got into this, I had all my friends' parents and all that, where I'm trying to yeah, talk to them about the values of healthy eating and how they could get off their medication. But hey, I can, to them it's like, well, my doctor told me that if I just take this medication, it doesn't matter. Like, so why would I stop eating these fatty meats that are causing my high cholesterol if I can just take this pill and it's all good. And there's no
Because it's
issues with
not a
it.
magic pill. That's
Yeah,
why.
yeah. So I think I mean, again, systemic. Like, if it was more discussed in the educational system, if the government was subsidizing broccoli and lettuce instead of Cheetos, because that's what happens. Like, the
Hmm.
government subsidizes corn, wheat, and soy, and this gets turned into this is how Cheetos are on the shelf for $1, whereas a salad is $5.
Hmm.
Because the government subsidies are in the wrong place. They're promoting this poor choices overall, because they're creating financial incentives to eat poorly.
Yep.
If the financial incentives were reversed, this would be different. If the cultural programming was reversed, this would be different. If we weren't allowed to advertise, Fruity Pebbles to kids and Lucky Charms to kids, and have this cool, little, gremlin or whatever the guy's called, the Lucky Charms guy who goes, or what is it, leprechaun,
Leprechaun,
who's going
leprechaun. Yeah,
after
yeah,
his pot of gold. Like, it all just seems so fun, so innocent, so just ingrained in our society that as someone growing up, you really have to kind of just wake up, like,
yeah. Hmm.
if you will, to, like, okay, well, this really isn't, this isn't serving me. and
Yep.
and right now, the majority of the population, I feel like it's coming into the awareness of the majority of the population. Like, everyone's starting to become more aware, but still, it's going to take time. Especially, I mean, I
Uh-huh.
feel like most of the younger generations are aware, are maybe making some better choices. I feel like, even my circle of friends is way different than our parents in
Hmm.
terms of what we're doing. But it's going to take time, and
Yep.
again, I think this needs to be more emphasized in public schools. This needs to be more
Hundred
emphasized,
percent.
like, in high school. You should literally have a full class on nutrition. Like, everyone
hundred
should
percent.
have a full class on wellness, nutrition, exercise, stress management, mindfulness. This should be a
Yeah.
full semester. If that was the
Completely
case,
agree.
yeah,
Yeah.
if that was the case, and if there was some government regulations on food advertising to kids, if everyone starts to see their parents eat, like, I mean, my kids are going to eat differently, but it's just, they're seeing it from me, and a lot of my friends' kids are going to eat differently, and I feel like this next generation is getting a little bit more aware. But before, just, it's a lack of information too. Like, our parents
Yeah.
didn't have the information. The
hundred
only
percent.
information they
That's what I
got,
was gonna say. Yeah.
yeah, the only information they could get is the food pyramid,
Yeah.
and there wasn't things available outside of that, in terms of, like, now we have access to so much information that's actually becoming, you know, counterproductive in some ways.
Uh huh.
I think we were so far on one end that some people take so far to the other end that
Yeah.
it's going to take some time to, like, just
and
balance
and
out.
this brings us back to mindfulness practice. I'm not going to get too much into it again, but like you were saying before, I mean, when you're and you, I totally agree with you. Awareness, when you're just aware and you pay attention to yourself, you don't have to have all the answers for what's going on around you, but if you can tell yourself and really be honest, I mean, like, truly honest with what you're feeling when you eat something or when you do something or when you think about something, and you can see, okay, this makes me feel like this, and then this makes me feel like this, and you can distinguish the two. You can kind of get the feeling what's better for you and what's not. And if when you start paying attention to those things, and you start journaling and doing some of the other things like you said, and I mean, that's a form of meditation itself. Meditation, like I've said before, you don't. It's not like you're sitting on a cloud and your mind's completely blank. I mean, it's just being aware of what's going on, being completely present in what you're doing. So, I mean, this is, and what you said about schools and incorporating this in schools, it's so important. And then raw stark living. I mean, and schools should have gardens. I mean, I completely agree with the cafeteria pulling from it to cook for the kids. I mean, like, that's 1,000% correct. I mean, there's absolutely no reason that we don't have these things. I mean, I know there's some I mean, I don't know how. I mean, I know there's also systemic pressures and things like this where some counties and cities and states aren't even allowed to do these things, but that's
Yeah,
beyond my
it's
comprehension. But
funding too, because
yeah,
like my kid's school has a garden, but you know we live in a decent area, so that's available. Whereas
100%. Yeah.
other areas, it's just not. And unfortunately, this is where you know a lot of the relationships between socioeconomics and obesity and poor health come into play because you know sometimes you have access to that stuff because of your economic, you know, your socioeconomics more so
Hmm.
than anything else. And you know when you go into because when I was doing my PhD, I worked in low income areas, and
Hmm.
I ran programs, family based nutrition and fitness based programs in schools with families and parents and children who were
Oh, that's
at high
beautiful.
risk for diabetes and
Wow.
cardiovascular disease, and you know, um, it,
You just
you
gave me
drive
chills, dude.
around.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you drive around and it's just like McDonald's, Taco Bell. You know, the only
Hmm.
grocery store is the you know the Hispanic grocery store, which is great. There's a lot of fruits and vegetables, but at the same time, there's not you know a lot of the stuff that you know the health foods and stuff like that you would you know there's a lot of these alternatives are not even available, and a lot of these people sometimes they don't have cars, so they shop in you know they're shopping at the convenience store and what's available there. You know, there's nothing available there, so you know they you know, these factors can really play a huge role as well, and that's where I say that the government subsidies can make
Yeah.
such a big difference
Yeah.
for
Huge.
those
Huge.
populations
For
because, yeah,
Totally agreed. Because like what Patty's saying is that a lot of it's like for some people it's just too much work or work that they don't want to do, and parents are so focused on their kids' grades and having straight A's or and getting into the next program or whatever it is, and they don't want their kids to be outside and doing these kind of work. I mean, if it's incorporated in schools, that's going to be part of their curriculum. And these are life skills. These are things that are really really important for our overall health. I mean, like we were saying before, mentally and physically. I mean, and passing it along to our kids is kind of like a duty of ours. I mean,
yeah,
to make the to even if we grew up differently, like you were saying before, how you grew up, you decided this isn't right. I need to make a change. So I mean that's the responsibility and the accountability that I think all individuals have, especially as parents, to teach the next generation to be a little bit better, if not a lot better. So
yeah,
I mean I completely agree with you.
yeah. I
And
think
it's a
part of it,
responsibility of the government officials and people that are in areas that can afford to do these things on their own. I mean, like I think Ross Stark Living said that they have a garden, and then what's not used is then sold at local farmers markets. So it's supporting other people that can't do it themselves. So, I mean, that's so important and very extremely mindful. I mean, it's so beautiful to see people doing stuff like that, and I think it's a duty as a society. Like, look, you're in Texas, I'm in Florida. That whoever's watching or wherever they're at, I mean, just because we're not close connected physically doesn't mean we can't help each other in some way. So,
yeah,
I mean, we have a duty to each other as a society to kind of help uplift other people around us that maybe don't have the fortunate time that we have to kind of create this space for ourselves and for our kids. So, I mean, what you just said, I'm telling you, it gave me goosebumps about what you did at schools and things like that. I mean, I mean,
yeah. I mean, it was
profound.
you know it's and we you know I'm still connected with a lot of those families that I worked with 4 or 5 years ago, and you know their life is forever changed.
Yeah,
And and but the thing is that the problem is those people can't come on Instagram and get information because if they do, they can't follow it. They
yeah,
can't go gluten free and dairy free and all these
yeah,
other things.
yeah.
That's they can't do that. They're not going to go that far. They're not going to spend double on their groceries to buy all organic.
Hmm.
And you know, if they come on here, most of the people are telling them that they have to go completely organic
Yeah,
or they're going to be unhealthy.
yeah,
Whereas you know, in that scenario, you know, we're making small shifts. We're telling them, hey,
a
you
hundred
know,
percent. Yeah.
a little bit less of the you know, because they're eating, you know, they're eating. It's not horrible. It was mostly Hispanic area, and you know, they're eating salsa and they're putting veggies in their
Yeah,
meals,
yeah, yeah.
but the amount of veggies is small, and I'm just like, let's just add a little bit more veggies.
Hmm.
Let's
Hmm.
maybe cut one tortilla out. Let's add a little bit less pasta and put a little bit more veggies. It's just these simple shifts that make such a profound difference. You know, instead of on the weekends, watching TV, how about, because, there's a lot of mountains in Phoenix where we're at, like, how about we would organize like these hiking trips, and they still do it. Like, I'm still connected with a lot of these families, and like they're still going hiking. They're still, they lost a bunch of weight during that time, and they're still maintaining it, because what we didn't do is tell them everything you're doing is wrong, and you have to go gluten-free and organic, and you have to fast every day and do all these crazy things.
It's not about making such drastic changes all at once. I mean, I think it should be a more gradual and progressive change for a lot of people, as you can do it. I mean, because look, unfortunately, there's a lot of people that, especially right now in the world and in our country, there's a lot of people struggling financially. I mean, I don't blame people for not being able to go get organic foods and things like that. I mean, but look, buying an apple is better than buying, like you said, a bag of Cheetos. So, exactly. I mean, it's just, there's simple, small little choices that you can make. And look, yes, I understand the things that aren't organic. I mean, I'm not going to get into it, but like, I don't even understand how that's allowed. I mean, organic should just be the standard, and then anything else should just be labeled inorganic, but whatever. I mean, but the chemicals and all the preservatives, pesticides, and things like that. I mean, there are ways to kind of make that a little bit better, rather than going to buy these heavily processed foods and meats and things like that. I mean, those are so much more detrimental, I think, and from what I've learned for people. So,
yeah, just like you said, an apple over a bag of chips. I think there's a couple of comments here.
Yeah.
So Patty, I mean, education is a big factor, especially in these low-income areas. Like, I think in other areas, probably not so much, but in some areas, like, education is such a big factor. Like, they couldn't, I mean, it was just so many simple changes that we got them to incorporate. And it was like, and just learning, like in Villa Saria, you mentioned, like, there's a notion that if you have a big body, you're healthy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of this thing, like, if you're food insecure, if you've been at a point in your life where there wasn't food, where a lot of these people were from Mexico, and they have had times in their life where food wasn't available. When food's readily available, the incentive is to eat, because you've programmed your brain from a history of not having food available, that when it is available, you gotta eat it. You gotta go after it. And that's where the kind of the body image, it wasn't, these people weren't doing it. I mean, we had to shift it, and I did not talk about weight loss. Now we measured, we did body composition scans and stuff, because we're running studies. So we're looking, because we're trying to get more funding for it. But we're not talking about weight loss. We're connecting it to diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and every single person. Like, I would ask, who knows someone who has diabetes? Everyone.
Oh yeah, everyone.
Who knows someone who's died from complications of diabetes? Literally, nearly everyone raised their hand, and that's where we're focused on. Do you want to go through this? Let's talk about what diabetes looks like. $10,000 extra dollars a year in medical spending. The most common cause of leg amputations. The most common cause of kidney disease and chronic kidney disease. And just kind of explaining what that trajectory looks like, because they don't know. They literally, like, it's just lack of education from that perspective, of like really not knowing that this is what that trajectory looks like, and this is, these are the factors that will literally prevent it. Like, you can almost guarantee, like I would tell them, like, you can almost guarantee that you're not. I would show them statistics too, like from studies, like, if you incorporate these 5 habits, your chance of diabetes is 0.02%. It's almost zero.
Yeah, and I'll take that.
When that awareness comes to place, and they look and they're like, oh wow, well, I have 2 siblings with diabetes, and like I don't want to go there. And it's really, there's so much emphasis on weight, and the relationship between weight and health is very weak anyway. It's habits. It's habits. It's a correlation, weight and health. It's the habits that lead
it's not
to
causative.
Yeah. It's, I mean, there's a lot. I could go a long way.
I know. There's a lot of factors that play into it.
Because it's not causative. Obesity, adipose tissue is not in itself harmful. It's when adipose tissue becomes dysfunctional and leads to
Mm-hmm.
inflammation that it can lead to some of these metabolic dysfunction and other issues. But having a little bit, being a little bit, having a little bit of body fat, there's nothing wrong with that. As long as you're metabolically healthy, as long as you have your cardiovascular health is great. So that was another thing that we're, kind of talking to them about is like, we're not trying to tell you to go out and you have to look like, the supermodel on this cover. You just need to take care of yourself. You need to be mindful of what you're doing. You need
Mm-hmm.
to really, eat to nourish yourself.
Yeah, 100%. And to that point, I mean, a lot of those supermodels and whatnot are not the healthiest individuals by any stretch of the imagination. So,
Exactly.
um, that's one of the, and like you said it earlier on, and people can go back and watch this if they missed it. You were talking about how your physique and what you look like does not translate to health necessarily. I mean, obviously, if you're extremely healthy, you might look more. You're more than likely to look more fit. But just because you look extremely fit does not mean you are healthy. So that's a huge factor. And Evidence Nutrition and Patty and Villa Surya, there's some really great comments. And like I completely agree with you guys. I mean, education, like Adrian said, is so important. And I mean, that is the foundation for all of this. It's just proper education, and that's why we were saying it's so important to put these things in schools. Um, and guys, please ask questions. I have some questions that were sent to me on the side for us. Um, and so for this to me is a huge one. Diets, like for example, like keto and things like that. I know you touched on it a little bit earlier. I mean, what do you think about diets and keto and things like that?
I mean,
In a I know I want to be respectful of your time. So in a couple of a few minute clip here.
diet to me, I don't think of like keto or anything. Diet is what you eat on a day-to-day basis. Like
Yeah,
that's your diet. That's what you eat.
yeah.
But in terms of like all these restrictions and rules, like it goes back to what I talked about earlier. If you need someone else to tell, like no one else who doesn't know you, who's not a practitioner, who's not working directly with you, who doesn't know your health history, who doesn't know how you feel, who doesn't know how you respond to food, they can't tell you what to eat for
Mm-hmm.
your best health. And
Mm-hmm.
there's all these there's it's difference between someone who says this works for me, and then the zealots who say this is what everyone should be doing.
Yeah.
Those people you need to move away from. They
Mm-hmm.
cannot give you the right information. They're trying to pad their ego by getting everyone to do what they think is best, and
Mm-hmm.
they cannot give you the right information. A diet. I have I put. I'm not a big fan of keto. Like I really, for the average person, I'm not a big fan of it. But I have put clients on a ketogenic diet before. I've put clients on a vegan diet. I've put clients on a nearly carnivore diet for
Mm-hmm.
various reasons. There's
Mm-hmm.
an application, there's a time and a place for every strategy that might work for a particular person based on what's going on with their physiology, and then also
Mm-hmm.
based on what they enjoy and what
Yeah.
they can maintain and what helps them to feel satisfied. Like, for example, if I've worked with clients who have, extreme levels of weight loss that they need to achieve, and keto diet tends to work better in those cases because it
Mm-hmm.
manages hunger, because you're not having the blood sugar, fluctuations that can lead to increased hunger. But, you know, I wouldn't recommend that for someone who just comes to me and says, hey, I'm just trying to get in shape. I want to incorporate better habits. Like, I'm not going to say, oh, go keto, cut out all carbs.
Yeah.
That's the right thing to do. Like, or any other extreme measure for that matter. My philosophy, in terms of diet is like, let's make as little changes as possible to get the result that the client seeks. Like,
Exactly. And
we
with
need to
what's in
make
their scope of possibility, of course.
exactly, yeah, yeah.
So I mean, and for like the whether it's a carnivore diet, a vegan diet, or for example keto, I mean, I would imagine, of course, lifestyle changes, and that's what the whole purpose is. But I mean, what would you say? I guess I should just ask you: is this something that you put somebody on for an indefinite amount of time? Do you
Oh,
say
never.
let's try this for 3 months? Let's reevaluate this in a month. How do you do things like that?
Yeah, never for an indefinite amount of
Yeah.
time. It's like, okay, This is the strategy that we're using to see if the principles of this dietary approach are beneficial for you. So
Mm-hmm.
let's say, for example, if someone is, because I have clients that they have like serious digestive issues, and every time they eat, any type of veggie, they have issues. So and but they're eating them and they're eating them and they're eating them and they're experiencing this poor response where they're having inflammation throughout their body. And for those people, sometimes we'll go, okay, well, let's move more towards a low vegetable diet for a period of time until we can get your microbiome back to where it needs to be, so that you
Mm-hmm.
can incorporate these foods back in. Because we know what a healthy dietary pattern looks like: lots of fruits and vegetables,
Mm-hmm.
lots of nutrient dense foods, kind of like Mediterranean type approach is what we know is probably ideal, for long term, mostly plant based, that type of thing. But some people can't get there because that makes them feel worse. So
Mm-hmm.
it's always like, okay, we're going to take this approach for the short term and then move towards a sustainable, overall diet that looks more like something that's going to promote longevity from what we understand,
Mm-hmm.
uh, based on the current science that's available, which is, lots of colorful plants, wide diversity of foods. And a lot of people can't do, I mean, most of my clients are on very limited number of foods, 15 different foods. And one of the
Mm-hmm.
biggest goals is, let's expand that
Expand.
as much
Yeah.
as we can. And sometimes people are eating everything. And I say, hey, we have to get you on 15 foods for a month or two until we get your symptoms down. And then we can try to expand it once we build up your microbiome and improve that area, so that when you do eat the broccoli, it's not causing this extreme pain. Because, even though broccoli is really healthy, is it healthy for you if every time you eat it, it's nutritious, it has great nutrients that are known to promote health, but
Yeah.
if it's causing you symptoms every single time you eat it, it's not healthy for you.
Yeah.
So we need to get to the point where you can handle it. And that's where, you know what's going on with that individual's physiology needs to be dealt with, and that can be done with diet, with nutritional supplements, with other factors.
Yeah. And I think it's so important for people to first start educating themselves on these topics. I mean, try different things, start doing some things and see how you feel. And then if you can, start working with somebody like yourself, because I mean, you have the knowledge base. I mean, look, and you went to school. I mean, you understand these things, and you continuously are looking into new research and can um, interpret the research properly. Because that's one of the biggest things. I mean, like we can't expect average people to just go look at research studies and be like, oh, okay, so now what? I mean, it's like they can read it, but they're not, if you don't understand what you're actually reading, it doesn't mean anything. So I think
Yeah,
it's really important for people to start incorporating, like Ross Clark Living said, eat the rainbow. I mean, you start doing things, but and then like you said, if you're eating broccoli, obviously it's very nutrient dense, very healthy for you. But if you're getting bloated and have tons of gas and like you don't feel well after eating it, I mean, clearly there's something imbalanced there. So that's when I think it's so important for people to start reaching out to, for example, you, to help them and guide them through this. And it's not a permanent situation, but I mean, to just start working with somebody that has the knowledge and the background and the experience that you have is so instrumental in people's health and for longevity purposes. I mean, I can't I can't say enough about it, really. Um,
yeah. I mean, it's if you're the average person who's just kind of going in and you're like, okay, I just want to eat healthier. Yeah, you can do it on your own, and,
mhm.
and kind of and in that case, I do recommend people doing it on their own, because you need to. It's a process, and you're going
Yeah,
to learn so much through that process. But
100%.
when you're trying to use food as something that's going to really transform some aspect of your health, that's when you absolutely need to get guidance.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, a lot of times you're gonna, I mean, it's easy to fall into going keto, going carnivore, going completely vegan. And most of my
Hmm.
clients have done all of. Dang it, I got low battery now.
Yeah.
So
All right.
most of my
So,
clients, they've done like they've done all the extremes in the past, and it's like you've
mm-hmm.
never actually listened to your body. You're listening to what other people tell you to do,
Mm-hmm.
and that's, you have to combine that with your own personal experience.
100%. And I do want to start wrapping up just a couple more things that people had asked me, because like you got low battery, and I know we're almost at half an hour here. um, three things that you'd tell people to never eat, and three things you'd tell everybody to eat.
So never eat. I would say. So I don't say that. I never do because
I was gonna.
I never say never.
That's my response. I was like, probably not gonna say
So
never to anything, but okay.
I'm a scientist, so I don't operate in absolutes. Everything's gray. But things that you mostly want to avoid, fried food, because you're taking these cheap oils and you're applying excessive heat to them, especially if you're getting it from, like, let's say McDonald's or something like that, where the fryer's been on for 6 hours and
and it's the same oil over and over and over.
Exactly. These oils are extremely oxidized, and they're going to cause all sorts of problems. So I think that's, like, for me, fried foods is probably like the only one that I'm like, okay, this is like a high end.
That one you can probably say never eat.
Yeah, things like Twinkies and stuff like that, I think kind of count. The Little Debbie section of the grocery store, I mean, those things are just, those typically have, high levels of canola oil and stuff like that, these polyunsaturated fats. They are okay if you're eating, cold pressed polyunsaturated fat. But if you're eating, something that's been exposed to high heat, which is typically the case in these processed foods, so the Little Debbie section of the grocery store, like that whole section where all the Little Debbie snacks are, like the Star Crunch and the Swiss cake roll, all the stuff I grew up on, that's number 2. And then number 3, someone mentioned it, soda. I mean, it's like a, just extreme blood sugar dysregulation. That's but I say this, and you also have to, and this is where I say never, I say this, and my kids ate fries from McDonald's yesterday after they went to the doctor, because, it's not going to kill them. It's one time, it's about balance as well. And, I used to be on the extreme where I would only eat what I made, and I juiced every day, and like I was like on a really far extreme in terms of like nutrition. My nutrition was like everything had to be perfect, and I'm so much healthier now that I have balance.
I know what you mean.
So much healthier now.
Yeah. The emotional aspect to food and creating the balance is really, 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 really important. All right, so 3 things that you tell just about everybody to eat.
3 things. So I'm a big fan of berries. Berries are just, I put them in my smoothies every day, and I pretty much recommend that to everyone. All my digestive clients can tolerate those for the most part. So, and this is going to be skewed because I work with digestive issues, so I got to think about things that don't cause, like, it would normally be broccoli. Broccoli would be one of them, cruciferous veggies, but that really triggers a lot of my clients, so I don't do that a lot of times. So I say berries number 1, mushrooms I love, but again, mushrooms, I would say cruciferous veggies and mushrooms, but these are like hit or miss for a lot of my clients, because the mushrooms can cause issues with cross-reactivity with fungal issues, and the broccoli can cause issues with fermentation and sulfur reducing bacteria. So although those are like three of my favorite like nutrient powerhouses, garlic and onions I would throw in there too, but again, those destroy most of my clients, like just because they're high in fructans and other fermentable carbohydrates. So those are my three favorite for the average population. But when you apply them to my clients, sometimes I can't really make those recommendations.
It's got to be on an individual basis, of course. And if you're in limbo with some of these things and you're not sure what to do, call Adrian. So that's the whole point of these things. So you guys can get in touch with people that really know and have the background and experience working with people, and say, okay, this isn't working for you, let's try this. Then maybe you can incorporate some of this back. So that's really important. All right, last thing. So, and you can recap on some of the things that we already discussed, obviously. If you could only share 3 things with people to start implementing in their lives immediately to improve their health, what would you suggest?
Daily exercise, number 1. Focusing, well, not number 1, but daily exercise. I don't want to put anything number 1.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I want to say sleep, but I think the mindfulness piece is like it's just it translates to everything. So like
That can
just
be a
some
combo
type of
because I've
mindfulness
read,
practice.
yeah, 100%. I mean, I think that's a combo. Sleep and mindfulness practices because I've read studies where a 20-minute meditate or yeah, 20-minute meditation is better than getting an extra hour of sleep. So, I mean, there's research behind that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I would say some type of mindfulness practice, some type
Hmm.
of, awareness type of practice. And then the last thing, uh, healthy relationships. Like that is so important. The people that you surround yourself with, the people that you interact with, that I mean, you got to cut them out. Like this is
Yep.
that's worse than fast food.
Yep.
Having negative people in your life.
Yeah. 100%.
I have been extremely diligent in my, adult years in the last, 8 years or so. Like if someone is not serving my life, like I have no problem moving away from that.
Yeah.
And even if we have a long history prior to that, it's uh it's just so important to have those right people around you who lift you
Yep.
up, who push you, who encourage you, who help you to and those right people are also going to be not encouraging you to make bad choices and helping you to make better choices. Like there that that and the mindfulness thing is just gonna translate into what you eat, your stress management, all
100%.
everything else. So like if
Yeah.
you get those two pieces in place, that's automatically just going to bleed into everything else.
Yeah. Completely agree with you. I mean, completely transform. Just those three things alone will completely transform your life. And not doing we're talking about removing toxic people from your life. It's not doing it in a selfish way. It's just because that relationship has become toxic and that person does not serve not you in a selfish way, but does not serve your best interest in life and inspire you to be the best you. So that's a really really important one.
And
I'm really happy you said that.
and I want to kind of a little bit elaborate on that because it doesn't necessarily mean you have to remove them. Like of course some people say, well, I can't remove my mom or my
Yeah,
brother or so.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah.
reposition that or like reestablish their role in your life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, stop letting them tell you what you should be doing with your life. Like change their role.
100%.
You don't have to fully remove them. That doesn't mean you never see them again, but change how you interact with them and change their role and create a
Exactly. Yeah.
healthy boundary
Yeah.
around that relationship.
That's what Patty just said. My girlfriend and I, we talk about this all the time. It's just creating healthy boundaries for your life. I mean, it's so important. So of course, thank you for elaborating on that. So we are going to close everything. Dude, I really appreciate you staying on here for like almost an extra 40
Yeah.
minutes. Thank
No.
you so much. If you could give us a quick recap of your business, where you're located, any courses or projects or best ways to get in touch with you, your social media, all this kind of stuff. Let people know how to reach out to you.
Yeah. So definitely recommend just following me here on Instagram. Also, checking out the podcast, Your Nutrition Prescription. I haven't published anything in a while, but I have an archive of just so much information there.
Mm-hmm.
My business, mostly working with digestive issues. So if you have IBS, IBD, diverticulitis, one of these, or something that hasn't been diagnosed properly yet,
Mm-hmm.
definitely reach out to me. I can help you. I run a program called Digestive Health Blueprint where we take, I have a foundation, a framework that we apply to all these digestive issues, and I've been able to really, really help people with that. Definitely looking at it from that perspective. The other piece, I'm starting to run like a moms-based fitness group with my wife because
Awesome.
she's like, just, I mean, from us meeting, she's made so many changes. Like completely, her life is just completely different now than when we met, and she just wants to help everybody else. Yeah, GERD and gastritis as well. Yeah, any digestive issues, SIBO, GERD, IBS. Like I have experience with all of it for the most part.
Awesome. That's
There's
beautiful.
very few digestive issues that I haven't worked with in the past.
Mm-hmm.
But and then that's the other piece. Any moms who want to kind of start incorporating some of these more, like general like nutrition and fitness and learning a little bit more about that and how to translate that to your family. I'll probably start running a dad's group again pretty soon. I used to do that a while back.
Dude, that's
Got a
awesome.
little bit too busy, but it's just I like targeting parents because that translates over to kids.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get a parent, you're actually impacting much more than one person. So
100%.
that's
That's the
where
future right there.
exactly. So
Yeah.
I've seen, I've worked with probably a couple hundred dads because I used to run a group pretty consistently. I'm located in San Antonio. I run my entire business online. So I run it completely virtually. I might get a physical space in the future, but right now, this is working, and it just technology is amazing to be able
Beautiful, right?
to allow that. And honestly, I feel like working with someone online is probably more beneficial than in person sometimes because, I mean, I have systems in place where I'm looking at your nutrition on a regular basis. We can communicate through chat. We have just better systems to keep more accountability and uh, than what you can get with going into an office once a month.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a big fan of the online space. I feel like the technology just really it makes it more affordable because someone doesn't have to pay for an office space, and you don't have to end up paying for that. You don't have to pay for that through your what they're charging you, and
Mm-hmm.
it also just it creates a better relationship in terms of you can create more ongoing relationship. Like I have my clients log their food and I can see it and I can see their symptoms, and that's not something that most people who work with in person can do.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just found that the amount of kind of being able to do that and using technology just takes it to a new level. So I'm
Awesome.
excited to see what we can, how this is going to continue to grow, especially with COVID. I feel like that's kind of pushing the limit in terms of people seeking the online space. And
Yep.
I'm excited to see how much of a benefit that this can have for people overall.
100%. And I mean, you have access to infinitely more people too. I mean, you can literally talk to someone on the other side of the country just
Most of
like
my
this.
clients are out of the United States.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, and not
It's
exactly across the
it
country,
blows my
anywhere in the
mind.
world. I mean,
Yeah,
it's so awesome.
yeah, it blows my
And it's
mind.
just how we use the technology. It's so important. So,
Yeah.
Adrian, thank you so much. I know it's Claudie said here he or she's gonna be contacting you. Villa Surya, Free Spirit, thank you very much. I really appreciate you guys interacting, the questions, the comments. It's been a awesome interview. I really appreciate all the comments, the feedback. Please continue to give me feedback, suggestions for maybe who you would like to see on the show. Adrian, I would love to have you back on in the future, and we can really actually talk about your specialty, the IBS, IBD, and
Go into some details about it. Yeah.
yeah, go into details about those things, autoimmune disorders. I mean, because these are things that I mean, I have people personally in my life that I know suffer from these things. Whether whether they realize it or not is the whole other issue. But I mean, that's something I'd definitely love to have you back on and really dive into. So I appreciate that. Everybody watching, again, like I said, feedback, suggestions, please contact me. Always feel free to reach out. Check out all the other episodes that I have on YouTube. This one is going to be up on YouTube very soon. You can check it out. The Art of Mindful Medicine is the name of the show. That's what it's called on YouTube, of course. We are on Instagram Live on Saturdays at 12 Eastern. You can also check out my website, www.mindful.doctor. And as always, I end with a quote. So today is from Chuck Norris. Always remember that your success begins inside of you. If you can't see it first, no one else ever will. And that, I mean, we were just talking about that too. So, I mean, that's
Yeah, I love
completely coincidental because I had this quote already way before. So, I mean, that's just awesome. And I appreciate you staying on here the extra time. Like I said, everybody, thank you for taking the time of your Saturday to come and watch and support and be a part of this interview. Thank you guys so much. And remember, stay awesome, stay mindful.
it. All right. Appreciate it.
All right.
Yeah, have a good one.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
All right, bye.